doing great over there. So, good afternoon, everyone, and I welcome you all to today's session of the next conference. First, I would be glad if you all can kindly subscribe to this channel and like the videos. And I'll also be glad if everyone can share their experience after we are done, tagging the ACX Unilag, and you should also use the hashtag the next conference and display a banner on screen. So when we are done with this session or during this session, you can all kindly just try to drop your questions in the chat box. So we would pick them up when we are done. And I thank everyone for joining, and please don't forget to subscribe. So today I'll be introducing our speaker, Prosper Michael Ametu. He's a young Ghanaian poet, public speaker, and debater. He developed his speaking skills through the fine art of debating and public speaking. He is currently a third-year student of sociology and political student at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Ghana. He also happens to be the vice president of the University Debates, KNUST Debate Society. Kindly welcome him to today's session, and I would hand over to him to begin.
All right. So thanks a lot. As we said, my name is Prosper Michael Ametu, and I'm going to be taking you guys through public speaking and how best to present a very good presentation and a public speech. So today, my speech is going to revolve around majorly 5 things. I'd first like you guys to all understand exactly what public speaking is. Then we're going to question what exactly constitutes a good speech, what makes a good speech. Then beyond that, we go to how to appeal to your audience. After that, we equally talk about how to deal with stage fright, how to structure a presentation. Then I'll equally give you some basic tips that are going to help you with future public speeches that you might want to deliver. So let's go straight to business today. So first off, what exactly is public speaking? So public speaking is the process of effectively addressing an audience. It could be delivered in a formal or informal setting. So you don't necessarily need to have a stage and a whole setup for you to be giving a public address or for you to be doing something that constitutes as public speaking. It could be just you and a group of friends, but then what you are talking about is one that has their attention and you have all of them listening to you and you are the expert in that particular field. That in of itself could be characterized as public speaking. In informal setting, you'd probably be talking to strangers, a large crowd of strangers. So basically, what I do, for example, I do spoken word poetry. Sometimes I'll have to speak to a large crowd of audience that I don't know anyone in, and like sometimes it's totally scary. But then I'm going to teach you guys how to deal with that fear and how to work within it. Also, it's important to recognize the difference between a public speech, what could be characterized as a public speech, and a casual talk. So the difference between a casual talk and a public speaking is that the latter, which is public speaking, is more purposeful and meant for celebratory entertainment, influencing, or informative purposes. So casual talks necessarily do not have any particular end that you are meant to satisfy. But with public speaking, there's a particular end you're supposed to satisfy. It's either it's a celebration and you've been called to give to give a vote of thanks or to say something with regards to the celebrant, or you are supposed to entertain people like what I do when I'm doing spoken word poetry, or you could be influencing people like politicians do every. So you have politicians standing and talking to a large crowd of people, trying to get them to vote for them. That is they using public speaking as a tool to influence people. It could equally be for information. That's basically what lecturers do all their lives. That's what make their money. That's how they make a living for themselves, to informing people via public speaking. So you realize that public speaking is actually something that is not as dicey as it seems. It's actually more eminent in various aspects of our everyday lives. We see a lot of people giving public addresses, giving public speeches, but we don't recognize or characterize it as public speaking because we have a preconceived assumption that public speaking has to be totally and totally like in a different context. And the first thing you have to do in order to excel in public speaking is to demystify public speaking in of itself. And that's why I decided to define what exactly public speaking is to you guys. Because if you don't succeed in demystifying public speaking, you'd always assume that public speaking is that scary thing that you can never do. Public speaking is for a select group of people, but then it goes beyond that. So, to our second bit, what makes a good speech? So, a speech can be said to be good when the audience is satisfied by the content of the speech delivered and the speaker has communicated his idea successfully. You realize that within every single public speech, there's an end goal. There is something you seek to communicate to people. If that thing is not to your audience, then you can't characterize that as a good public speech. It's not worth that characterization. It has to be one that has a very good conversation and one that has the end goal fulfilled. So if you don't fulfill the end goal of communicating an idea, then it doesn't characterize as a good speech. So every good speech has four major elements. I decided to put them in mnemonics so that you'd be able to keep them in your head easily. It's called REAL, REAL. So the R stands for relevance. Relevance meaning that your content should be relevant to your audience. It's going to be particularly nonsensical if you spend time explaining something that people have no interest in wanting to know. It doesn't characterize as a good speech if what you are saying is totally something that people are not interested in. When there is disinterest, then there's going to be a serious difficulty giving a good speech. So if you really want to give a good speech, you have to make sure your content is relevant. There are two scenarios in this particular subject. So in the first instance, you might be lucky enough to have people who consider your topic relevant in the first place. But then you get to lose them whilst you are speaking because the content doesn't speak to what they want. And in the same place, you can have people who totally do not even welcome what you are coming to talk about, but then you still have to give a good speech, so you have to find a way to make them welcome what they're talking about. In these two instances, what you have to keep in mind is that every single audience can be swayed to appreciate what you have to present. Your content could always be made relevant regardless of the audience, whether they like it or not. It's all down to how you present your idea, and that is where the other three fall into place. So the second one is eloquence. Eloquence has to do with how you present your idea. Present your idea using clear language. If you try using big words and big terms, you tend to lose certain people, and that becomes a problem in the course of your presentation or in the course of your public speech sorry. That is very bad because when you do that, certain people feel that the speech you are giving is not for them and they do not belong in a category of people who should listen to what you have to say. That is something you should always try to avoid. So try to make sure that your speech is as eloquent as possible. The third thing is articulation. Your speech should be articulate, well thought out and expressed. You should always recognize what you want them to understand. There is always a barrier between audience and you. What you have in your head is different from what they have in theirs. In order to bridge that gap, that is where articulation is important, because if you don't think through exactly what is going to guide them to what you have in your head, you'd have a difficult time communicating your idea to them. You always have to think out, be strategic. You should know exactly how to go about what you are doing. So you should know that you should start from this point and move on to that point, then move on to the next and the next. So you should have a well thought out plan of what's going to make it easy for people to understand. So articulation, you should be well thought out and expressed. The last bit is you have to be learned. You should always recognize that people would pay more attention to you when they feel that you're an expert, when they what you are teaching them is something they can't get from any other place. People always pay close attention to people that they believe are experts. The reason why you are paying so much money to go to the university is not because your lecturer is handsome or your lecturer is beautiful. The reason why you are paying so much money is because you think that your lecturer has something to offer you that you can't get on your own. Because I think that every single thing you learn in class, every single thing you learn in school, you could pretty much pick it up on the internet. I read sociology, but I'm learning certain bits of quantum physics on the internet. You could always pick it up from the internet, but then you recognize that your lecturer is an expert and he can guide you through these things, and that's why you'd always pay fees to go to school to get that lecture from that quote unquote expert. So in every public address, in every good speech, you have to prove that you are learned, you have to prove that you are an expert, and you have to use facts and figures, because these are the only things that could necessarily flag out that learned sense that you want to point out to your audience. It's very, very important. So, to our next bit, how to appeal to your audience. Now, the thing is that sometimes the problem is not really you. Sometimes the problem is not from your end. The problem is not what you want to communicate. The real problem is the audience themselves, how we can communicate to the audience. Like, we have different types of audiences, and we do not necessarily know what exactly they want. So this bit is going to address that. Every audience member falls into one or more of Aristotle's three categories of persuasion. Whilst it is impossible to know which category your audience falls under, it is safer to incorporate all three into your speech. So I'm going to teach you these three categories that Aristotle was able to frame up in during its time, and I think they are still relevant in modern day conversations, in modern day interactions and public speeches. So there are three categories of people that you, or there are three categories of persuasion that you could go through. So the first one is what Aristotle calls logos. He says that there are people that you can appeal to by using logic. So for certain people, no matter what you say, you could give a very spirited speech. You give some something that makes so much sense. So I don't know if you guys have watched the 300. King Leonidas is going to give you a very spirited speech, but you know that this speech is very stupid. You know that these people are going to die in the end, because in that speech there is little logic and more emotion. Certain people would never fall for your emotion, and you need to appeal to their logic. For these guys, what you need to do every single time is that you need to make sure that your speech is as logically coherent as possible. The question now is, how do we make our speeches logically coherent? Mapping out logic is quite tricky because sometimes you do not recognize have logical loopholes. But then you should always know that a smooth flow of logic is always dependent on exactly how you transition your speech and how you jump to certain ends, how you make certain assertions. So a logical speech, or a speech that appeals to logic, is one where we do not necessarily spend time making assertions. You don't just say, well, I think the sky is blue. You say things like I think the sky is blue because when you look at the color pigmentation of the sky, you realize that it falls under a certain category that is in the rainbow, and it falls under a certain like category that we characterize as blue. So that's what makes us think that the sky is blue. When you do that, you've appealed to the logic of your audience, and in that regard, they would always consider what you are saying sensible, and they would always want to pay attention because they think that you are talking about something that makes sense, something that they can understand. So for audience that you need to appeal to with logos, you always have to make sure that your public speech is very, very coherent and logical. The second bit of persuasion, or the second category of persuasion, is what Aristotle calls ethos. This has to do with credibility. Now, you realize that when I spoke to you about the sky being blue, I didn't just end at saying the sky is blue. I told you that when you look at the color pigmentation of the sky and you particularly compare it to our understanding of colors, you realize that it falls under blue. Ethos has to do with you establishing credibility, not just appealing to logic, but giving proof and giving statutes that show that what you're saying makes sense. Do not confuse ethos with logos, because sometimes you can appeal to people's logic without giving them proof. You just need to give them a sensible sequence of events. That is what makes logic. Logic is basically a sequence of events that makes sense. But with ethos, what you have to do is that you need to show them on the basis of character that you're an expert, like I said earlier. You need to give them proof as to what exactly you are saying. So from your end, you could say something like, well, we think that the sky is blue because when you step out and you look to the sky, you'd realize that it looks in a certain way. So with that, you're letting them look at the sky. You're giving them proof of what they can see. You're appealing to something that they can consider credible, because like they're looking directly at the sky. When you look at the sky, you realize it is blue. When you compare it to our understanding of coloration and the science of coloration, you realize that it falls under this facet or that facet or the other facet. What you are doing there is that in that bit, you are appealing to the credibility that they seek to have when they are having a conversation or when they're having you speak to them. If you do not have credibility, you stand the risk of losing a large amount of your audience. A lot of people would not fall for what you are saying if you are not credible. It's very important that you are credible. Now, the third bit is actually one that is very, very important. It's called pathos. It basically speaks about your emotion when you're speaking. A lot of people give boring speeches because they do not add any emotions to what they say. What they say is very blunt. What they say is very tasteless, very insipid. And in that regard, you lose your audience because your audience doesn't feel a connection. In every single thing you are saying, in every single public address you are giving, you should always find out the content, that like the things that you think are going to spread out a certain amount of emotions from your audience. So take for example, so I used to live in Nigeria, so I know that there is serious erratic power supply in Nigeria as compared to Ghana. So if I'm talking about power supply in Nigeria, I am not going to try to just appeal to your logic or appeal to your credibility. I'd equally try to appeal to your emotions. And I'll do that by making sure that in every single comment I give, in every single address I'm making, I am always appealing to your emotions. So when I'm talking about electricity, I'm not just going to say, well, electricity is bad in Nigeria. I'm going to say something like, well, electricity is bad, but then think that I think that the reason why electricity is bad is because it pisses us off whenever we lose whenever we lose the power supply or whenever the light goes off. Oh, I can see a lot of people complaining about the fact that they can't hear me. Okay. Well, I'm coming. I'm trying to check the chat to see if everyone can hear me again, because I can see a lot of complaints in the comment section that you can't hear me.
I can hear you now, but it's quite breaking, so you can proceed.
All right. So I think it's just a certain fragment of people, because other people say they can hear me. So I think I'm just going to go back to the presentation. I'm going to go back to the presentation since I think that a certain amount of people can hear me. So I think we can work with that. So with pathos, you always have to make sure you appeal to the emotions of the people you are speaking to. You should understand that certain words would always trigger certain emotions, and certain emotions are favorable. So, in order to create a proper atmosphere when you're talking to your audience, a very, very good thing to do is to make sure that you appeal to their emotions. A basic way of doing that, with the example I was trying to give earlier, is, for example, when you're talking about erratic power supply in Nigeria, you should always give a question, a rhetorical question like, don't you all get annoyed when the lights go off? You realize that the audience is going to be in a frenzy, and you get them saying things like, yeah, we don't like it, it's very bad. When you do that, what you've managed to do is that you've managed to trigger a certain emotion within them that gets them more involved in your speech or in your delivery. When you do that, you tend to have a better connection with your audience, and they are more willing to listen to you because they feel that you understand them. They always want people who can put themselves in their shoes. Your audience always wants to feel like you are in their shoes and you understand what they go through every day. So you should try to appeal to their emotions. So this is a very important part. I'd really appreciate if everyone could hear me at this point, because I'm about to talk to you guys about stage fright. And this is something that everyone struggles with. So I'm going to check the comment section again to see if everyone can hear me, because I think that this is the most fundamental part of today's presentation. All right. Okay, someone said I should check my audio. I'm checking my audio. Can everyone hear me? Okay, so Raji Mustafa says it's not breaking at his end, so he can hear me. So I think I'm just going to continue because it's just a few people that say they can hear me. Don't worry. Someone says I should recap. Don't worry, I'm going to recap at the end of my speech. I'm going to recap at the end of my speech. So whatever you missed out on, I'm going to summarize for you very shortly. So to back to the presentation. How to deal with stage fright. This is very, very important. That's why I wanted to know that everyone was listening. So the first thing you should understand about stage fright, the very, very first thing you should understand about stage fright is everybody suffers from stage fright, but people handle it differently. There is no one that doesn't suffer from stage fright when they're about to give a speech. From the president to the lecturers to ordinary people like you and I, everyone suffers from stage fright, but we all create different coping mechanisms to make sure that the stage fright doesn't affect us as much. So I'm going to show you a more universal tool that you can use to conquer stage fright. So although several unique ways there are several unique ways individuals deal with stage fright before a speech, The only certain way to conquer stage fright is to be confident, and confidence majorly comes from adequate preparation and practice. So, one thing everyone fails to recognize is that it's very difficult giving a speech that you didn't prepare for. Very few people can do that. That's why even rappers find it difficult giving a freestyle out of the blues, because it's difficult giving something that you never prepared for. You always have to have a certain framework that is worked within for quite a number of time before you get to speak, else you're going to have a serious difficulty in communicating to people. So, first thing you should always make sure you work on is that you prepare again and again and again. There is no amount of preparation that is ever enough, but then you should always recognize that the more you prepare, the more comfortable you become. You should practice in front of the mirror so you get to see yourself talk. You get to see how your facial cues look like when you say certain things, and you know whether or not they are pleasant to you and if you are okay with looking that way. You should also practice in front of your friends so that they can give you feedback. You should always know that there is no such thing as bad feedback. Every feedback is good enough. Either it is positive feedback or negative feedback. You should always recognize that there is always a way you could use that feedback to your favor. There is always a way you could find out how that feedback is going to positively affect your speech. So practice and prepare. It's never enough to make sure that you do not, it's never enough to make sure that you've given it just one run or you have a fair idea of what you want to prepare. Until you practice perfectly well, you can never be sure that your speech is going to go well. If you do not practice, you are going to definitely flop. It might not be so big a flop, but it's going to be a flop nonetheless. So you should always make sure that you practice in order to give a very good speech. Also, another good tip that you can use to get yourself comfortable when you are on stage is to focus on faces that make you comfortable. So certain people will prefer to focus on looks or focus on probably pretty ladies in the audience. Maybe their pretty faces makes them feel comfortable. Certain people will prefer to focus on probably people who are smiling at them. Those people make them feel comfortable. Certain people focus on faces that trigger a certain memory of comfort. So you see someone that looks like your mom or someone that looks like your brother, and that face makes you feel comfortable. Try to focus on such faces. There'll be people who would frown at you. That's definitely going to come. But then whenever your eyes cross those kind of people, what you should do is that you should just give them a faint smile in the middle of your speech and look for someone who has a more welcoming face to focus on. And I think that that's going to help you deal with your stage fright and you would have any problem when you are speaking. Another trick you try to adopt is to try to acquaint yourself with the audience before you start your speech. So you'd notice that certain people would ask questions to the audience before they start their speeches. They would go like, so the first man in the front row, may I know your name? And they give the person the microphone and the person introduces themselves. So in that bit, what they are trying to do is to create a connection between themselves and certain people within the audience, so that whenever they are confused or whenever they feel uncomfortable, they just look at these people and they start to feel comfortable again. That is a very good tool that you could try to adopt, and that is something that could always work properly if you need to feel comfortable. So I think that like it all boils down to three things: practice, focus on the faces that are welcoming, faces that make you feel comfortable, and thirdly, you should always make sure that you create a connection with your audience that will make it easier for you to have a, a presentation without stage fright. So to the next bit, I have a very nice quote here. It's by Edward R. Murrow. It says, the best of speakers know enough to be scared. The only difference between the pros and the novices is that the pros have trained the butterflies to fly information. So what I'm trying to say is that everyone has butterflies in their stomach. There's no one that is fully confident when he's going into a room to give a speech. There's no one who has everything totally under control. Everyone has something that they are suffering from, something that they think makes them uncomfortable. But the thing is that everyone.
All right, so I think everyone can hear me. I think everyone can hear me clearly. My headset is having a little issue, so I'm going to try to fix that so you can hear me clearly. It's probably because of the headset you're having some difficulties.
We can hear you clearly without the headset. You can proceed. Did you get that?
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me clearly? Omoni.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you clearly.
All right then. So I guess I'm going to continue. So another bit that is very dicey for a number of people is question and answer sessions. One thing you should always remember is that if you give a very good presentation, if you give a good presentation, you are not going to have a lot of difficulties with Q&As. People are not really going to stress themselves to hear you. Like, they won't stress themselves to try to probably sabotage your speech with a difficult question that you can't respond to, because most times your presentation has done half the work and has gotten them to understand every single thing they need to understand. But however, there are going to be things that certain people will still have problems with. And I think that the first thing you need to do whenever you're asked a question in any Q&A session is to clarify the question. Always clarify the question so all other audience members have an idea of what the question is and avoid repetitions. So one thing that always happens in quite a number of bad Q&A sessions is that people don't really understand that the question they want to ask is the same thing as what the other guy is asking. And when they do that, what they do is that they keep repeating and creating a cycle of similar answers that make you look bad, because it's going to seem as though you didn't understand their problem and you're just giving them the same answer to the other guy's problem, because people always want to feel like their problems are unique and you're addressing the uniqueness of their problems. So in situations like that, what you need to do is that you need to clarify the question. So someone says something like, "Sir, we want to understand why you believe that women are the most victimized group of people in society." Probably if you're having a conversation about feminism. I'm sorry I'm using feminism a lot. It's something I've been reading on a lot lately. It's the biggest topic on Twitter. So we want to understand why you think that women are the most victimized group of people in society. This question could be repeated in 3 different ways. Someone could also come and say that, "Sir, we want to know why you think that the struggles of a woman is more difficult than the struggles of a man." It's the same as the first question I said. Another person could come and say that, "Sir, we want to understand why you have this claim that women deserve to get a little more lax. They need to get lax buy-ins from society. They need to get a certain amount of relaxed laws from society just because you think that they are vulnerable." You realize that like all these questions sound very similar, but then they equally sound different. As the expert, what you need to do is that you always need to clarify the question. So for the very first person who asks that, "Sir, we want to understand why you think that women are the most vulnerable group of people in society," first thing you should let them know is that, "So thank you very much for the question. You want us to discuss about why you think women are vulnerable, why we think women are the ones that are being attacked more by society than men, why you think that women should be given a lot more than they are being given today." You'd realize that with this short clarification I've given, I've managed to clear off all the other 2 questions that I pointed out initially. People are not going to repeat these questions because they feel that what I'm coming to say is equally going to address whatever problems they are having. In that regard, you'd realize that you've saved yourself 2 other questions, you've saved yourself repetitions, and you've saved yourself the stress of having people assume that you are not taking them seriously, or you don't think that their problem is unique enough, so you are giving them the same answer you're giving to everyone. Always clarify the question so the audience understands what exactly you are coming to answer. This doesn't only apply to large audiences, it applies to small audiences too. If it's an interview and you're in front of a panel, it's going to be very, very important to clarify whatever question the panel asks you. So the panel goes like, "Tell us who you are." So you could answer that question by telling them where you're from. "So my name is Prosper. I'm from Ghana, Africa." Or you could answer that question by explaining to them where you schooled at. "So my name is Prosper and I schooled at KNUST." Or you could answer that question by telling them where you live. You see, all these things are varying ways to answer the same question. And probably that question is not as broad as it sounds. But when you crystallize the question, when you clarify the question, you make people understand that you have a full grasp over what exactly it is you are presenting, and you have a full understanding over what exactly it is their problems are, and they feel more comfortable with your answer. Second thing to recognize is that you need to empathize with your audience. You always need to empathize with your audience. When they ask a question, appreciate their point of view before giving a response. You should understand that not everybody is going to be nice to you during your presentation. Certain people are going to be absolute monsters. Pardon me for my language, but then that's the best I could use to describe them. Some people are just there to basically rant and to make sure they make you look stupid. But a good way to deal with people like these is to make sure that you empathize with them. So a very good example is the police brutality topic that is trending all over the world right now. So George Floyd was killed by a white policeman when a policeman was kneeling on his neck. You would hear a lot of white people say things like, well, we think that it's a bad thing for George Floyd to have been murdered that way. But we don't think that the problem is white people. We think the problem is the fact that George Floyd was resisting arrest. In answering such a question, what you should do is to first show that you empathize with where they're coming from. So, okay, we understand that you might think, we understand your point of view, we understand that you might think that George Floyd was trying to resist arrest. But the reason why you are making that assumption is because you probably didn't notice that George Floyd totally cooperated with the policemen right from the start of the arrest to the end. But then they assumed that he was going to be violent, and that is why they did what they did. So, in that regard, you've clearly shown how you understand their point of view and you appreciate it. You're not blaming them for not understanding. You just believe that there's something that you can add to what they already know that's going to make them understand what you are saying better. So, in that regard, you've created a very, very good connection and you've diffused that toxic bomb that the person is probably coming to put in front of you. Always empathize with your audience. Make sure that they feel that their questions are being appreciated. Tell them you appreciate their point of view. Tell them you are very grateful for their question. If you do that, they feel more comfortable and they do not feel attacked by your response. Lastly, the problem with a lot of public speakers is that they try to play God. A lot of public speakers assume that they can play God when they go and present something. They can give an answer to every single question, and everyone is going to be able to believe everything they are saying. The thing is that what you do when you try to play God is that you risk your credibility. You have to be honest with your audience. Admit when you do not know certain things, and when you can try to take their contact information and promise to get back to them. So if I'm probably giving a speech about the police brutality conversation, I don't think I know everyone who has suffered from police brutality. I won't act like I do. I don't think I know the things that have been put in place to prevent police brutality. I don't think I know everything that has been put in place to prevent police brutality. I won't pretend that I do. But whenever someone asks me a question about something I do not know, the first thing I'm going to do is to admit that I do not know it. So probably someone goes like, sir, we understand that you find police brutality very appalling, but then don't you think that a lot of things have been done? Don't you think that the institutionalization of a better police handbook is something that we are trying to do and we should applaud us for? I genuinely don't know what is being done with the police handbook. I don't know what the American police handbook looks like. I don't know what information is within that handbook. So I'd admit to them, I'll tell that audience member that, well, I honestly don't know exactly what the content of the police handbook is in America. However, I think that we could always improve upon whatever we have now, because if it was perfect, we are not going to have problems in status quo. But beyond that, I'm going to make sure that after this presentation, I peruse the police handbook and I give you feedback via your email address. So I'd appreciate it if you could give me your email address and I tell you a thing or two. You'd realize that when you do that, you have a more comfortable audience which appreciates exactly what you are saying. So to the last bit of my presentation today, tips to help you through your presentation, whatever presentation it might be. Very, very first tip, realize that every single speech has three sides: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Always make sure that the beginning and the end are always catered for very well. If you don't cater for the beginning and the end, you have a probability of having a very messy speech that's not going to be appreciated. So, first tip you should always recognize is that you should start strong. A good introduction piques the interest of your audience. You could start with an introduction with a story. So you probably tell them a story about what you're coming to talk to them about, or you tell them something that's is an interesting fact that they would appreciate. These kind of things make them feel more connected to you as a presenter, and they would appreciate what you are saying better, and you manage to pique their interest. So if for nothing at all, for the first 10 minutes, you know that you have their attention wholesomely, and that is something that would equally prove useful in the long run. Secondly, you should give a brief summary at the end of your speech for the purpose of clarity. People would miss a lot of things you say. Right now, I'm scared that half of the people that I tried connecting to today didn't hear exactly what I had to say. A lot of you are commenting in the comment section, in the chat section, that you can't hear me. You don't know what I'm saying. You would like it if I recap. At the end of my speech, I'll give you a brief summary. I'll go through everything I said in about 1 minute, and it's going to help you realize at least what exactly you've missed, and you'll be able to better appreciate these things when you come into contact with them later, because I'm going to release my slides to you guys and the likes. But then, third thing you should also recognize: keep it short, keep it simple, and you would maintain your audience's interest. So if you want to make sure that your audience is interested in what you have to say, don't give a long speech. I honestly didn't expect my speech to be up to 56 minutes. I expected it to be about 45 minutes tops. But then I think that the interjections that I kept having made it a little difficult for me to give like a very short speech. But then in future speeches that you might have to give, make sure that it's short, make sure that it's straightforward and it's simple for everyone to understand. If you do that, everyone will still be interested in what you have to say. Also, maintain eye contact with people in the audience. You should always make sure that people are looking at you directly in the eye, and you can see certain people when you are talking. That eye contact is necessary. Do not look at your shoes. People have a nasty habit of looking at their shoes, looking at the floor, looking at the ceiling. Don't do that. I mean, think of how this conversation or how this presentation would be if I gave a presentation to you doing this. You see, it looks very weird. You wouldn't appreciate and you wouldn't take me seriously if I kept looking at the sky, or if I kept looking at the floor and you have to look at my forehead. It won't look nice. It won't look like something that you'd want to listen to. So always make sure that you keep eye contact, or you maintain eye contact with your audience. Furthermore, you should make sure that all fact sources are referenced in your slideshow. So don't just lift things. Show people where you lift them from. It equally gives you credibility. We realize that we already said that credibility is very important in whatever it is you are presenting. Also, be passionate. The more you seem to care, even if you do not make sense, the more people will try to understand what it is you are trying to say. So a lot of people here say they can't hear me, but there was someone who said, "I can't hear you," and the person puts a crying emoji. I'm assuming that the reason why the person feels so pained about not hearing me is because the person believes that I'm offering something that is going to be of help to the person. So the person wouldn't like to lose out on that. So the person is very interested in what I'm saying or what I have to say to them. And the reason why they are interested is because I seem to be very vested in what I'm saying. And I seem to be very vested in what I'm saying. And it triggers a certain amount of desire to want to know exactly what I'm saying on their end. So you should always be passionate. When you're passionate, you're going to make sure that people pay attention to you. Also, remember, you are the boss. You are the boss. The reason why public speaking makes you the boss is because you are the only one talking. No one else is talking aside you. Everyone is listening to you. So you are the boss. Do not feel pressured by the atmosphere. You create the atmosphere. What you say is law. What you say is what people believe. The only time people will have problems with you is when you do not follow those 3 persuasive elements I told you about. When you don't sound logical, when you don't appeal to their emotions, or when you don't bring proof that would help accentuate your credibility. If you make sure you have all these 3 things, you would know that you are the boss of that atmosphere, and no one can tell you how exactly you should go about your things, because you successfully go about it properly. So I'm done with my presentation today. But before I'm going to take any questions. I'm going to quickly rush through everything I've spoken about today. So I've run through basically 4 things today. I think it's more than 4. I've run through about 6 things, yeah. So first off, I told you what exactly public speaking is. I said to you that public speaking is speaking to an audience. So it could be formal or informal. It could be with your friends. It could be with people you don't know. And public speaking is different from a casual talk, because in a casual talk, it's not necessarily to a particular end. I could chat with people on WhatsApp for no reason at all. I called Damola a week ago and we're just talking about random things about life back in high school. Like, we don't need to have a particular end that is pertinent for that particular conversation. And even if there is one, it keeps changing and it's not permanent. But with public speaking, it's to a particular end. Also, I spoke to you guys about what makes a good speech. I said a good speech has to have 4 elements. It has to be relevant to your audience. It has to be eloquent, so you have to use clear language. It has to be articulate, so that means it has to be well thought out and expressed. And finally, you have to be learned, or you have to seem learned, so you have to be an expert by using facts and figures. Also, I told you about the 3 categories of persuasion, the 3 elements Aristotle coined that would help you persuade people. So we have logos, which is logic, ethos, which is credibility, and pathos, which is emotion. Finally, I told you about how to deal with stage fright. I told you you can deal with stage fright by making sure you prepare, making sure you focus on people who smile, making sure you get feedback from your friends and from your mirror when you practice, and equally making sure that you do not let people who do not posit a comfortable outlook to you to contribute to how you'd see the crowd. Focus on the smiley faces. I gave you a quote and I moved on to how to structure your presentation. I said there are 3 ways to communicate an idea. Just think of it as an essay. Give a topic sentence, give an explanation to your topic sentence, then equally provide proof to that explanation. When you do that, you give a very good presentation. I equally went on to analyze to you that in giving a good presentation, it is always safe to start from the known variable before you move to the unknown variable. And that's what's going to help you give a proper transition in your presentation. Always keep facts and figures that are easy to forget on your slideshow or on cue cards, so you always have them in your memory. And avoid bulky slides, keep things as short as possible. Then on dealing with question and answer sessions, Q&A sessions, I said, always clarify the question so all audience members know exactly what you are trying to talk about, what you are trying to address, and they do not repeat that same question in a different characterization. It's very important to do that. I equally said, empathize with your audience. The audience needs to feel like you know what they feel and you're addressing their feelings. Some people are not really there to listen to the content of your speech. Some people are there to rant. So always give them the opportunity to rant, but still prove to them why they are wrong. Then finally, I told you about how you need to make sure that in every presentation you give, you make sure that your facts and figures are intact and you have references. Then I gave you some tips that would help you with your presentation. So I'm done, and I would welcome questions from any and everyone right now.
Hi, Prosper. Thank you very much for this insightful section. It was really, really great, and I think I myself was able to pick quite a number of things. So, the first question: can I exaggerate things when doing a presentation?
Can you come again?
Can I exaggerate things when doing a presentation?
Okay, can you exaggerate things when doing a presentation? So the thing is,
Yeah.
sometimes it's safe to exaggerate things when you do a presentation in order to get people to feel more enthused about what you're saying, to get people to feel more connected to what you are saying. But then it's advisable to avoid exaggerations, because when you exaggerate things, people could call you out on your exaggeration, and it's really going to tarnish your credibility as a speaker. If you lose that credibility, every other thing crumbles. Every other thing you've built totally crumbles. So it's safer to make sure you accurately present things for what they are without necessarily garnishing it up to make it sound nicer or to make it sound more emotional. It's always safe to be precise and to be accurate. Do not try to exaggerate.
Okay, I have another one here. That says, what would you do when you have an impromptu speech and no time to practice?
Okay. When you have an impromptu speech. All right. So impromptu speeches are very dicey. Um, Impromptu speeches are called extemporaneous speeches, extempo speeches. For impromptu speeches, there's actually no magic to it. There genuinely is no magic to it. I can't tell you something that you do that's going to make sure you hit it like every single time. But one thing that is always going to make sure that you survive an impromptu speech is when you always make sure that you have very good structure. So when you're given an impromptu speech, first thing you should always do is to highlight exactly what you want people to understand. So what exactly is this speech about? So for example, yesterday I was supposed to give a speech to someone about police brutality in America. I had just read about it on Twitter, and I was supposed to give like a very good speech to him, because it wasn't just him, it was him and a number of other students in my class. They wanted to understand the police brutality topic. So in giving that speech, the first thing I did was that I analyzed to them what exactly police brutality is. Then I spoke to them about the history of police brutality, and I spoke to them about the people who have suffered from police brutality the most, before I then delved into the particular topic that is trending on social media. What can we deduce from what I just did in that particular extemporaneous speech? What I did there was that I created a pattern, something that is easy to follow for them. So with extempo speeches, it is safer for you to start with the easiest of things. Like I said earlier, start with the known variables before moving to the unknown variables. If you always make sure you start from the simple things, it builds up your confidence in yourself, and it equally builds up your audience's confidence in you. So in that regard, you have a better presentation, because extempo speeches or impromptu speeches are very difficult to be perfect. It's difficult to give a perfect impromptu speech, but then it's better when you give a more structured impromptu speech, when you have an idea of what you want to say and how you want to get them to understand what you want to say.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think I have another question here. This says, how can someone with speech difficulty cope with public speaking? I guess you've answered that during your presentation, right?
Okay, so how can someone with speech difficulty cope with public speaking? So I'm assuming that by speech difficulty, you mean people who cannot communicate properly. So probably someone who stammers or someone who stutters, right? So the first thing is, it's always very difficult for people like that to be able to give a wonderful speech. But then you'll be shocked to realize that certain people who have speech difficulty still manage to communicate the idea even better than people who have very good prospects in speaking, who have no difficulty in speaking. One thing you should always recognize if you have speech difficulty is to always make sure that in a bid to communicate your idea, whatever hitches that you have or whatever hitches you encounter when you're communicating your idea gets addressed later. So probably when you are stuttering after pronouncing a word, it's going to be safer for you to make sure that your audience understood what you said before you progress. For people with speech difficulty, the problem mostly is that they do not know exactly whether or not they are properly whether or not people can hear them or whether or not people get to communicate with them properly. But then the safest thing to do is to make sure that you always have your audience following you but every point in time, so you have a better like interaction with your audience. Just make sure that they do not have any difficulty. You might have a problem in communicating, but make sure they do not have a problem in understanding. That is the trick to it.
Okay, that was great. So the last question before we move to the next is, during a live presentation, you can't exactly glance through your speaker's note. How do you not freeze up, hand, or forget what you were to say?
Okay, so this is something that a lot of people face. I'm very glad you asked this question. So the thing is, everyone assumes that public speakers are magicians, so they're expected to give a wonderful speech without necessarily looking at the board. So you should have everything in your head. You should have memorized your speech. That's what everyone assumes that you should do. It's very unfair, but then they think that you're a magician, and it's your job to make sure that they still believe you're a magician. So an easy way to do that is to make sure, as I said earlier, that you have a full grasp over what exactly you are going to present. The only problem there is that there would still be certain things that you can't commit to memory. You definitely can't remember every single part of your speech. But then, a good way to make sure that that doesn't hinder you is, as I said, make sure that those dicey bits, the most difficult bits, are the ones that are highlighted on your slideshow or highlighted on a cue card. So I don't think anyone is going to fault you if you have cue cards that you refer to just not frequently, but just sporadically in your speech from time to time. As long as it's not excessive, then you wouldn't have any problem with whatever audience. They won't think that you are reading to them. They'll think that you're just trying to keep track of what you are saying. So just make sure that you practice well enough and you have full control of what you're coming to say. Be a master of what you want to say, and you wouldn't have any problem in communicating whatever ideas you have. Thank you.
Okay, that was nice. So, yeah, we are rounding off this session, and I would like, before we leave, I would want you to like say one, like, do you use videos for training during public speaking, or do you read books? If you do, kindly recommend probably some YouTube videos or some guys on YouTube that they should watch, or a book that you think would be helpful before we round up the session.
Okay, so I don't really have a particular channel I watch for to learn how to better myself as a public speaker, but then there are certain speakers who have like a desire to get other people to better understand the art of public speaking. So for most of them, they drop a lot of content on the internet. The problem though with those videos is that they are very, very dicey. They are very short, so they don't fully encompass everything you need to know. But then there's a book that I think is going to help anyone who wants to better themselves at public speaking. The name of the book is Confessions of a Public Speaker. I'm going to send it to the admin so that the admin makes it available to whoever needs that particular book after this presentation. The book encompasses everything I said and much more. It has a lot more than what I have said, and it's going to properly help you to better understand um your bid to communicate an idea. And I think that's something that would benefit us all.
Okay, thank you very much, Prosper, and thank you for taking our time to speak with us today. So, to everyone, please kindly try to tweet the best lesson you learned from this session and tag at ECX Unilag, and also you should kindly use the hashtag the conference Unilag and the next conference, sorry, and also kindly subscribe to this channel, like this channel, And tonight, I think there will be a Slido, and you can use the code 2730 to participate in the next. And the next session will be starting by 3:30. And thanks, Prosper, for your time. Bye.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it. It's my pleasure.